So, Viktor Gyokeres is once again gaining attention around Europe. When I first heard of this guy, he was playing championship football. Didn't really pay him any kind of mind, to be honest. I think I saw like a tweet about him and scrolled right past it, but I remember his name. Then last year, he gained some traction again because his celebration started spreading like wildfire, and I'm not going to lie, it's a tough-ass celebration. I'll give him that. There was also all these rumors about Arsenal monitoring him, and I watched a few sporting games for him. Lethal finisher. Last year, he had 24 non-penalty goals in the league off of just under 19 non-penalty expected goals. In total, he had 29 goals and 10 assists in 33 games in the league. This season, he already has 16 goals in 10 games in the league, and in all competitions for Sporting, he has 21 goals in 14 games. To put it simply, he's bugging the fuck out. You might be thinking, why aren't big clubs jumping all over this guy? And to be fair, it's a very solid question. When it comes to the Premier League specifically, I've seen the same arguments being used against signing him. The main one is that he won't see as much space as he does in Portugal's league, and that outside of his finishing, he's not really a complete striker. We're not going to really focus much on the second one. That's a conversation for another day. Today, I kind of wanted to talk about the whole league thing when it comes to transfers, because the way people, especially some Premier League fans, talk about it is kind of funny. For those of y'all who've been subscribed for a while, I want to take y'all back to last season where I was begging Arsenal to sign a striker. I'm not sure if I remember, but one of the main things I hated the most about all the transfer discourse was the quote-unquote Premier League proven phrase, because the logic is so absurd to me sometimes. People were arguing for Ivan Toney over any transfer from another league simply because he'd proved he can score at a serviceable rate in the Premier League. No ambition for any player that could develop into a star or had any superstar attributes. Just a player that was good enough in the Prem just because he was quote-unquote Prem proven. All of this, of course, stems from what I like to call flop phobia. The fear of taking too much of a risk on a player from a lesser league and that player ends up flopping. It's a justified fear, of course. Anthony looked like a guaranteed superstar when United dropped 100 mil on him, and now he's the laughingstock of Europe and honestly one of the worst wingers I've ever laid eyes on. Darwin Núñez was overperforming his expected goal total by 8 in Portugal and then arrived in the Prem and got Down syndrome in front of goal. It's kind of hard to identify which player is actually a star no matter the league and which player feasts off of weaker opposition. Even after a player seemingly flops, it's kind of hard to tell because sometimes they flop for external reasons. Sometimes they come to a club in turmoil and it doesn't really click. Sometimes they're forced to play out of position. Sometimes they don't fit the system, and sometimes they just can't handle the pressure of a big club. But oftentimes it is true that they simply aren't good enough to play in the top league. In Gyökeres' case, I don't know. Like I said, it's hard to tell. They said he wouldn't get that space in the Prem, but I don't know. City spread their ass cheeks open like a stripper on a pole trying to get an extra 20. We don't know for sure whether he'd be a hit or not in the Prem, but what we can do is take a look back at other transfers from the leagues that are ranked below England's in Europe. Which league actually statistically has the best hit rate when it comes to transfers in the Prem? Where is it safest to spend a bunch of money nowadays? I tried my best to find out. So I went back to the top 50 most expensive signings from every single transfer window from 2015 to last season. I then collected every single transfer from another league to the Premier League in those windows and separated them each into one of 3 categories. Category 1 is a hit. These are the signings that were successful. The club got themselves a star or at least a very good player that contributed greatly during their stay at the club. Category 2 is the middle. These guys might not have lived up to expectations, but they weren't terrible. Some of them were semi-solid players for a little while and then left the league. Some of them stuck around for a while, but they were just never the player they were in their old league. Category 3 is a miss. These guys got signed and were either ass or just not really impressive whatsoever. A lot of them barely lasted in the Premier League. Others were here for a while and they just sucked the whole time. Expectations also matter here, obviously. If a club signed a player from another league and then based on their performances there, expected them to be a star and they couldn't maintain those performances in the Prem, then they were a miss. But if they signed up from another league based on their performances there and expected them to be a solid, serviceable player and they were just that, then they would at least go in the middle but would normally be a hit. Obviously, there's all kind of context that matters here that could determine which one they go into, but y'all get what I'm saying. A lot of these can easily be argued and it's pretty subjective, so I really don't mind if y'all have different opinions when it comes to these transfers, but I try to be as accurate as possible. Got it? Okay, good. Out of all of them, only 6 leagues had enough total top 50 transfers to be included. The other 4 in the usual top 5 leagues, of course, and then the Netherlands and Portugal. The Serie A had 21 total players with hits like Mo Salah, Rudiger, and Jorginho. Salah turned out to be one of the greatest players in league history after pulling up from Roma. Rudiger won a UCL with Chelsea before his move to Madrid after coming from Roma too. Jorginho led that UCL winning team after coming to Chelsea from Napoli. There's also one of the greatest keepers in Prem history. He came from Roma as well. They were kind of feeding the Premier League a few years back, I'm not gonna lie. They definitely had plenty of misses though. Felipe Anderson for one, there's Lukaku. He's a weird one because at one point he was definitely successful in the Prem for sure with Everton, but he also had those spells where he would go to the Serie A and tweak out, then come back to the Prem and look like a drunk uncle Chelsea picked up off the corner. Koulibaly was viewed as one of the best at his position at Napoli and then spent a disappointing season at Chelsea before dipping off to Saudi. Scamacca didn't work out at West Ham. There's a few other misses too, and then you have the middles like Onana, who's been underrated because of his numerous shit mistakes, but also makes enough shit mistakes that you can't really call him good. Lucas Torreira as a middle to me, Matteo Darmian, guys like that. I also put Pogba with the middles because even though he never lived up to the 105 million they spent on him, he had his fair share of good play for United, and it's hard to call him a complete miss. This guy hooped here or there over those few years. La Liga had 26 total players, with its main hits being the Ballon d'Or winner Rodri, Odegaard, and Isak. Its biggest misses were guys like Mustafi and Emerson Royal. Mustafi lasting 4 years at Arsenal is the funniest shit ever. This guy crapped himself on a regular basis and then dipped off to lounge on Spanish beaches while Arsenal fans still get nightmares of him having a staring contest with the ball while the other team scored. Multiple times. Kepa and Morata are some other misses, while their middle players are guys like Jefferson Lerma and Diego Carlos and Danilo when he played for City and shit. The Bundesliga had 29 total players, with hits from all the way back like KDB, Son, and Firmino to recent hits like Haaland and Leon Bailey, who looked like he'd been a waste till he sprouted for Aston Villa last season. Their biggest miss is probably Sancho. He's just never looked like the guy he was for Dortmund in the Prem, even during this little Chelsea trip. Haller was also pretty ass when he came to West Ham though, gave it like less than 2 seasons and say, yeah, I'm not built for this. They definitely do have a pretty huge amount of middles. Pulisic didn't work out at Chelsea, but he had his stretches. Some Chelsea fans still talk about lockdown Pulisic to this day. Most of Xhaka's Arsenal career didn't go too well, but towards the end he turned it around for like 1 season, maybe 2 max, and in his last season in the Premier League he was incredible. I kind of wanted to put him as a hit, but when the number of bad years outweigh the good one by that many, it's hard to, even though I honestly don't mind if anyone says he's a hit. I'm not going to argue against it. Guys like Szoboszlai and Nkunku are still middles for me, I won't lie. Szoboszlai has the occasional weeks where he's on it, and then the next 2 games he's good for nothing except biting his lips and looking at the camera. Nkunku was hurt for a lot of last season, and this year hasn't done much, but he's been useful in the cup games, so it's like, do I really call him a complete miss yet just because of the Premier League alone? Anyways, Ligue 1 has the most players with 31. Their main hits were guys like Saliba, Fabinho, and Bernardo Silva. They got a good amount of misses, I'm gonna be real. Dizazi really some shit, and so was Ndombele, bless his heart. He was kind of entertaining at least. Last I checked, he was fat as fuck in Turkey. I hope he over there having fun. Their middles are guys like Lucas Moura and Andre Ayew. I don't know for sure where to place Martial. He could have been a hit or a middle, to be honest. I went with middle just to be fair to some other players that I also put in the middle. Martial never came close to what he was really supposed to reach at all, but he was washed by the time COVID started taking souls, and he was only like 23. You can argue that's not really an indication that he couldn't hack the Prem, because there was a lot of external factors, and he was more than solid for a while, so honestly, put him with the hits if you want, I don't care. The Netherlands had 13 players, with their biggest hit being Lisandro Martinez, and Portugal had 12 players, with their biggest being Bruno Fernandes and Ederson. Now, obviously, since each league had a different number of total players, you can't just use the total number of hits to determine which league was the most reliable. But either way, it doesn't matter because the league with the most hits and the highest percentage of hits was the same regardless in this instance. Of their 29 total players, the Bundesliga had 15 hits for a 51% hit rate. If you're wondering who the 15 players were, it's KDB, Son, Guardiola, Gravenberch, Haaland, Van de Ven, Konate, Leon Bailey, Joelinton, Thiago Aubameyang, Sane, Gundogan, Firmino, and Jorginho Rutter. Rutter's the only debatable one. I mean, he had 16 assists in the championship last year, and he's off to a great start in the Prem, but I get it if anybody thinks it's too early to call it with him. The Bundesliga also had the lowest percentage of misses with just 14%. There were 4 total: Sancho, Timo Werner, Haller, and Baba Rahman. I have no idea if I said that right, I'm not gonna lie. A couple of years ago, Havertz might have been one of those, but even then, it would have been debatable with him scoring a UCL winning goal. After turning it around at Arsenal and going on a scoring spree during the run-in of a title race, he's firmly in middle instead of miss, to be honest. The league with the highest percentage of misses was the Netherlands with 46%. Anthony, Ziyech, Bergwijn, Davinson Sanchez, Klaassen, and Memphis Depay, a whole bunch of ass. Funnily enough, the Portuguese league was the only league other than the Bundesliga to have 50% hits, with 6 of their 12 being considered successful. Bruno Fernandes, Pedro Porro, Mateus Nunes, Ruben Diaz, Ederson, and Raul Jimenez. Nunes was great at Wolves, and he's found his place at City. Jimenez was actually a monster before David Luiz literally exploded his brains. He had a couple great seasons before that. Of course, the sample size for Portugal is smaller than the others, so it is a little skewed. It also does get a lot more interesting when you start looking at different positions. Attackers from the Serie A can't be trusted. Mo Salah's the only success out of the biggest signings since 2015. Scamacca didn't work out. Lukaku didn't work out at United or Chelsea. Some think it was the club's faults. Some think he just got figured out in England after the Everton days and his shit first touch and bad work rate just didn't fly anymore in the Prem. Felipe Anderson didn't work out. Højlund didn't take a step forward and looks even worse than last year, though we should probably wait to see if MRM can fix him before a final judgment. Shit, I didn't include him because it was too recent, but even Zirkzee's been consistently ass this season. That Chelsea performance was something else, bruh. Now that I think about it, Salah's the only big success story in like 2 decades. What was the last one? Was the last one Henry? Because that's a long-ass time ago. Shevchenko came and he was ass from the bottom of my booty hole. Gotta be careful with them Italian forwards, bro. I'm gonna be real. It's funny because everybody says be wary of Bundesliga attackers, but they're far and away the most reliable place to shop for a forward. Sancho and Werner really killed their rep because having Son, Firmino, KDB, Haaland, and Aubameyang and Sané is crazy, and that's just attacking players alone. Even the ones that didn't really meet expectations like Havertz, Nkunku, and Pulisic made their marks in different ways. Shit, Moussa Diaby was a middle, and he might have been considered a hit if he didn't instantly dip off to Saudi. La Liga midfielders are reliable picks. Rodri and Partey came to the Prem, and after injuries kidnapped Conte, they took over the best defensive midfielders in the league debate before Partey's knees turned into oatmeal. Odegaard, meanwhile, is one of the best midfielders in the world for Arsenal, and Kovacic was a core part of both Chelsea's UCL winning team and the City Prem winning team. Ligue 1 is funny because there's barely a pattern at any position. You deadass have no clue what you're going to get because the ratio is damn near equal. They've given the Premier League Saliba, Gabriel, and Gusto, and in the same breath given them Disasi, Badiashile, and Diop. At midfielder, they've blessed the Prem with Fabinho, Paqueta, and Onana. Even Bruno, too, just to turn around and crap out Anguissa, Bakayoko, and Ndombele. It doesn't get better with attackers either. Bernardo Silva and Jeremy Doku cool. Even Lacazette did sturdy work for years, and he's given Arsenal fans headaches, but he had enough moments to get like a middle. Then they hit you with Nicolas Pepe or Batshuayi to keep you on your toes. I don't know what they got going on over there, I'm not gonna lie. Is there any reasoning behind some of these patterns? I'm not sure. Bundesliga attackers might have a higher success rate because the Bundesliga is a more open, less defensive league. They get to be more adventurous and creative as they develop, which may lead to them having increased confidence as players, and their creative bag might end up being bigger than players from other leagues. Then you have the Serie A, where they have the least physical contact nowadays, according to this graph. It makes sense that attackers from there get to the Prem and they're like, hold on, I ain't know y'all was moving like this. Of course, like I said earlier, in some cases, there's other reasons for a disappointment of a transfer. Often, though, the player just can't keep up with the tougher comp in a different league. So, to wrap it all up, the answer to the overall question would probably be the Bundesliga based on everything we just looked at, but it's also important to remember that not all flops are created equal. Always look at all the different reasons a player might have flopped instead of simplifying it to they couldn't hack it in the Prem. Not every player is the same. Anything from team chemistry to injuries to playing out of position could lead to a transfer failing. As for Gyökeres specifically, I don't think we see finishers like him often. There's nothing wrong with pointing out the flaws in his game, but I think he started to prove that he can score on anyone now. People always act like Premier League teams are these infallible, perfect walls of rock-solid defense whenever we talk about foreign players, as if we don't see defenders make a fool of themselves every single weekend. They can be opened up, and when they open up, whether it's through passing or through a dumb defensive mistake, you want a killer that can pounce on it.